Heya, welcome back to another video. Thank you for joining me today. As always, I hope you're keeping well. So today I'm going to be talking you through my summer TBR, and I have a pretty ambitious one because summer is usually the season that I get the majority of my reading for the year done. So I have a couple of series that I want to read, I have some chunky books, I have some classics, a good portion of horror, so let's get into it. So firstly, I'm going to start with the horror, and I have Monstrilio by Gerardo Córdova. So this is a horror novel that's very much inspired by fairy tales and folklore, which is what piqued my interest in it in the first place. I love folk horror, I love fairy tales, and this just sounds like it's going to be an incredible read that is probably going to stay with me for a very long time. This story follows a grief-stricken mother as she's lost her only son, and in her grief she decides to take a portion of her dead son's lung, and using the knowledge that she has from local folklore and fairy tales, she creates some sort of ritual and nurses this sample of lung into a creature called the Monstrilio. And knowing what she's done is wrong, she decides to hide this creature in the walls of her family home. And while he does resemble her son in some ways, he is just not able to control his monstrous impulses. So it's really the story of a mother's love, of grief, and of acceptance, and I'm really looking forward to getting into it. Next, I have another really anticipated read, and that is Jawbone by Monica Ojeda. So this is a really strange, weird novel that supposedly really gets under the reader's skin. It combines pop culture and cosmic horror to create a really trippy storyline. This story follows two sisters who are so alike they might as well just be inhabiting one body. They're almost complete doppelgangers of each other, and they're completely and utterly obsessed with each other. That's how close they are. However, something goes amiss when one of them ends up being held hostage in a cabin for many, many years, estranged from her sister. It's one of those books that really explores the trauma of adolescence and the fear of separation and just fear in general. And it sounds like it's going to be a really fascinating, complex read. Then a Stephen King novel that I'm really looking forward to getting into in August for my readathon all in August is The Dead Zone. So this has been a book that has been on my radar for years. I'm always interested in reading the kind of less, I don't want to say less popular Stephen King books, but I feel like the more chunky his books get, the kind of longer I procrastinate on reading them. Although I will say with these new editions, the font is actually a really decent size, and even though this book is 500 pages, I think I'll get through it quite quickly, and the plot sounds absolutely fascinating. So this story follows our main character, Johnny Smith, as he wakens from a 5-year coma after being in a car accident. And when he awakens, he's informed by the doctors that he has some sort of brain damage, and it's not quite clear to him what this means for his future. But after a while, he starts to have these really weird encounters with strangers. Basically, he realizes that he has developed the ability of clairvoyance, and through touching another person, he's able to see their future and their ultimate demise. Now, people around Johnny think this is fascinating, they view it as a gift, but he really views it as a burden, as he would rather not know, and he would just rather this had never happened to him in the first place. And this ability leads him down a really dark path when he encounters a corrupt politician, and he sees an absolutely horrid vision of what this politician has done. I think this novel is going to be an absolute thrill ride of a story. I feel like it's going to be one of those stories that I am going to have to stay up really late reading in order to finish it, because to me that plot makes it sound like it's going to be a book that I won't be able to put down. So I cannot wait to get to this in August. Then I have a short story collection that I have been really keen on getting started, and that is North American Lake Monsters by Nathan Ballingurd. So this is a new release for over here in Europe. I believe it was only published in America originally, and then we got this edition earlier this year, and I immediately went out and had to track it down because I knew I wanted to read it as soon as possible. This contains 12 short stories. It's been recommended to me time and time again by a number of you, and I am just so excited to finally read something by this author. Despite the fact that it's called North American Lake Monsters, I believe only 2 or 3 of the stories are actually about monsters. It's really more so about the monstrosity of human nature and humanity and how dark the world can be. And I believe each story is kind of written in the style of like a dark noir horror fantasy. And that just sounds absolutely banging to me. Then I have When the Reckoning Comes by LaTanya McQueen. This is a book that ever since it was published, I've really wanted to read, and I decided that this was going to be one of the books that I include on my Summerween TBR. So far, it is unputdownable. So the story follows our main character, who has spent the last 10 years of her life desperately trying to forget her past and where she came from. And she is faced with having to deal with the realities of what she's been trying to avoid for so long when her friend ends up getting married. And this marriage is happening on a plantation that has now been turned into a resort. But even though it's a resort now, the horrible racist history of the place has not been forgotten, as our main character quickly realizes. People who come here celebrate and take part in the antebellum history. That includes being served food and drinks by a seemingly all-black staff. There are horrifying reenactments that happen on this land, and it's just incredibly dark and seemingly continues to get darker once our main character learns of the folklore that is also associated with this place. There are rumours and whispers of angry spirits of slaves that supposedly wander this land in hopes of revenge, and that revenge may take place in the mostly all-white wedding party. So, like I said, I'm really enjoying this so far. I love when horror novels also combine the horror with historical elements, and so far this is right up my alley. Another horror adjacent short story collection that I'm really looking forward to is A Sunny Place for Shady People by Mariana Enriquez. I have been purposely procrastinating on reading this just because I'm looking forward to it so much, and I know that once I have it read, I have no more Mariana Enriquez to consume for the next while. Mariana Enriquez is one of my favourite contemporary authors. I have really enjoyed every single collection and story that she has put out there so far. And this seems to be a collection that is in the same vein of The Things We Lost in the Fire and The Dangers of Smoking in Bed, where it explores real life elements, political issues, feminism, all combined with horror elements to make them really stand out and hit home for the reader. So I'm hoping is going to be like a 4 or 5 star read for me. Now getting into the fantasy and sci-fi stuff that I want to read this summer, I want to start a new series, despite the fact that I have a whole heap of series already ongoing, but sure, one more won't hurt. I really want to read the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. This is a series that I've been curious about for the last couple of years. I have seen so many positive reviews of this series, and I just kind of want to experience what everyone else who raves about this has experienced. So the story starts out as our main character comes home to discover that her husband has killed their son and has taken their daughter hostage. And while this is kind of like life ruination at its finest, the rest of the storyline seems so insignificant to what our main character's plight is going to be from that point in order to try to get her daughter back and salvage what's left of her family. Outside of this, the world is in need of dire help. There are civilizations collapsing in on themselves, and the continent known as the Stillness has some sort of apocalyptic type event known as the Red Rift. This event spews ash into the air and darkens the skies for years, and thousands of people die. With no daylight, no clean water, the lack of traversable lands, and stockpiles running low, our main character really has a lot to contend with in order to get her daughter back. Again, this sounds like it's going to be one of those stories that hopefully I won't be able to put down. I only have the first book in this trilogy, as I have kind of learnt my lesson in buying full series without having read the first book. But if I do end up really enjoying this as much as I hope to, I'm going to get the second and third book from the library, because I can't really invest in buying fantasy or sci-fi series anymore just because I'm running so low on space. So it's going to be the library here on out for me. So one fairly ambitious reading goal that I have for the summer, but one that I'm desperate to see through, is to finally finish the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb. I have had these books sitting on my TBR on my shelf for years now, and I just want to get them read just to have the satisfaction of knowing that I finally read them. Now, I did read The Assassin's Apprentice a couple of years ago, but it was during a time period where I was really struggling with my concentration when reading, and I don't feel like I gave it a fair rating at the time. And because I have such a poor memory of it, that is the reason why I've held off on reading the next two in the series, because I know that I'll have to go back and reread The Assassin's Apprentice, which now I'm at the point where I'm happy about, I'm excited about. But for the longest time, I just felt dread knowing that this was going to happen. So I'm really looking forward to finally have this series read and to see whether Robin Hobb is a fantasy author that I'm going to gel with or not. So our main character is Fitz, and he is the illegitimate child of a prince. The story begins with him as a young boy who is abandoned and then later picked up again when it's realized that he has some form of magic ability, and he is, as the title suggests, trained to be an assassin. So his magical ability is something called the Wit, where he can communicate telepathically with animals, and I remember this being quite brutal. In The Assassin's Apprentice, there was like one particular moment that was absolutely gut-wrenching for me. Again, that was another aspect that I was kind of procrastinating on, because I was like, I don't want to have my heart ripped out of my chest. Mostly I read for fun and not to have actual real emotions. I know this is quite a lofty reading goal, but I need to get them read. Next is a book that you might find surprising, because I don't tend to read like super popular books, or at least popular books at the time that they're currently popular. But I found this in a charity shop recently, and for €1, and considering it looks like it's never been read, it looks like it's in brand new condition, I was like, do you know what? I'm going to give you the chance and you're going to come home with me. And that is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. So obviously this is getting a film adaptation that's coming out next year. So there is a lot of interest and buzz around this at the moment. And I really picked this up having no clue as to what the story was about. I just knew the hype and the high regard that so many people have for this story. So the story follows our main character as he awakens on a spaceship. And the main problem he has is that he has no idea why he's there. He has no memory of who he is or his past. And he has no idea what type of mission he's been sent on. He really has no help because his two crewmates that are with him are dead. So he has to go through the very stressful motions of what mission he's on and what it is that he is trying to achieve. And what he doesn't know is that he's actually on a last-ditch effort mission to save humanity. And if he's unable to complete his mission, basically that's it for the world as we know it. While the plot synopsis does sound a little bit formulaic to me, I hope that this will be enjoyable. And if it's not, at the end of the day, I only spent €1 on it and it can go straight back to charity if I hate it. A library borrow that I'm super excited for, and one that I never really thought I would see myself reading, but after reading a collection of short stories from this author, I now want to read her entire backlog, and that is The Gracekeepers by Kirsty Logan. So this story follows a character who is basically working a job as a form of punishment for something that she did many years ago that she is still very regretful for, and something that still bothers her. And she's given the title of Gracekeepers, and her role is to oversee the dead as they're being laid to rest. So she's overseeing these seaside burials, which, I mean, it doesn't sound like too much of a laugh. It seems like it's still a very important role to make sure and oversee that these seaside burials are being performed correctly. And it's one of those stories where the main character is introduced to another character who makes her realize that there is a lot more to life, and kind of gives her that vitality that she has been very much missing in her life. So it sounds like it's quite a hopeful story, and it's also inspired by Scottish myths and fairy tales. And like I said before, I'm just really into reading about fairy tale retellings or fairy tale inspired works at the moment. I'm also getting back into the swing of reading classics more regularly again. In the month of June, I read and completed Ulysses by James Joyce, and that has kind of lit a fire under my ass to make more of an effort to read the unread classics that I have. But it's also made me think about the books that I haven't read yet and that I feel I should have read by this point. And one of those books is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. So I have never read any of Dr. Maya Angelou's works, and I've always been really curious. Now, I know going into this, it's going to be a very heavy read. It's going to be upsetting, and I feel like it's also going to be an incredibly rewarding read. One of my best friends read this and absolutely loved it and has been very much encouraging me to read it over the last couple of years. So I decided to get a copy out from the library and make it a part of a reading vlog that I'm going to do. This story is a memoir of Maya Angelou's childhood as she's sent to live with her grandma, and then she's kind of sent back and forth between various family members, and it deals with a lot of the issues and trauma that she experienced as a young child and adolescence. And it's really the story of self-love and overcoming those past traumas in order to become a stronger person. So it sounds like it's going to be a really powerful, incredible, worthwhile read. So speaking of classics that I haven't read yet, one that has continued to escape me, which you will probably find quite surprising considering how much I love Gothic horror and how much this is a staple, The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. So this is just one that I've always been meaning to read and I just haven't gotten to yet. Now, this is a very fancy edition. This is the Barnes & Noble leather-bound hardback edition. So this story was first serialized in 1909, and it follows the story of a young Swedish girl who grows up in the Paris Opera House as her father is a famous musician. And when he passes away, he promises her that he will send a guardian angel to look after her. And not long after his death, she starts hearing this mysterious voice who starts encouraging her to use her own voice and to sing. And as a result, she ends up performing and becoming quite a well-regarded singer. But this voice isn't just something that she has been imagining in her head, and it's not the voice of a guardian angel, it's the voice of the phantom who lives down in the bottom of the opera house. And he becomes increasingly more jealous and upset with her success, until one day this young woman just disappears. I know this would be a great story to read for the autumn period, but I have a tendency to get kind of like my autumn reading out in the summer as well, because obviously there's certain videos that I want to make, there's certain recommendations that I want to make, so it's not ideal for me to read all the autumnal stories that I want to read in the actual season of autumn. This is just one of those ones that I'm just going to have to make do with reading in the summer. And then finally, to get into some of the manga series that I want to read this summer, one that has been sitting on my TBR for quite some time is the Drifting Classroom series by Kazuo Umezu. So I have the first and second one in the trilogy, and if I enjoy it, and I hope to enjoy it, I'll be getting the third one from the library because I just don't want to be making any unnecessary, overly expensive manga purchases this year. So this series follows a group of children as their elementary school is somehow mysteriously transported and drifted into a desolate wasteland. And it follows this one group of kids as they're trying to figure out why this has happened and how to get back to where they live. And they're just dealing with various issues that seem to be popping up every other moment because this wasteland is not safe for children, surprisingly. So this sounds like it's just going to be a whole heap of fun. I usually tend to not take manga super seriously. I don't read it through a super critical lens because I always just hope to have fun with the series that I read. And then finally, the last manga series that I am really looking forward to getting through this summer is a series that I picked up a couple of years ago now, and it's just been sitting on my bedroom floor unread. So I'm going to correct that. And that is the Claymore series. So this has been compared to The Witcher, and as someone who is going to be finishing The Witcher series fairly soon, I know that I'm going to need something to immediately jump into that's kind of like similar in the same vein, but still enjoyable. So this is about a group of women who are trained to be monster hunters, and these monsters usually take the form of people. They have to kind of figure out and deduce who is actually a real person and who is an actual monster. And it's super graphic. The details in the artwork is incredible. And it's just something that I have looked forward to reading for so many years now, and I just know that this is the summer that I'm going to get it done. So this is the content of the box. There are 27 volumes in this series. This has been a series that I have wanted to read and get my hands on for such a long time now, and the fact that I've just had it for like the last 3 years just rotting in my bedroom is such a travesty. So those are all the books that I'm planning to read this summer. If you've read any of them, let me know your thoughts, and also let me know what you're planning to read yourself this summer. And if you want to keep up with me outside of YouTube, you can follow me on my Instagram and TikTok, where I make short form bookish content that I don't really share over here. And if you haven't done so already, feel free to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and I greatly appreciate it. And as always, I hope you enjoyed this video and I will talk to you soon. Goodbye.